going live, but if not, then let's just screw it. I'm just going to start. Good evening, everyone. This is actually a live podcast from the Talker Thought, although this won't be uploaded in my podcasting channel, which is Talker Thought without spaces. And this is one of the Read With Me series. I'm just gonna do it live. I think it's interesting to have a Read With Me series on this channel. White is for Magic by Laurie Faris Talares. I've been reading this for months now. I think it's going for years. Hopefully not. So I'm just really doing this so that I would be able to finish the entire story. This story, for those of you who are not yet familiar about The White is for Magic, this is actually a trilogy, and I don't think this is the first book. There was a story that was, I think it was Blue is for Magic. No, don't take my word for it. I don't know. This is just the first book I've read from Laurie, and I bought this from book sale, and I find it interesting because of the cover. It looks really, you can almost see the prints in here, and there is even a word, I'm watching here. Yeah, I don't know if you can see it now. You can't, but in here there is like a very very light glowy. It's actually a very very glowy, not very, what am I talking about, but this is glowy white, I'm watching in script. And yeah, I'm not going to talk about the cover because this is essentially the chapter 16, almost halfway through the book. I'm just gonna start. For those of you who are not yet familiar, you can just listen to the previous episodes in my podcast. Again, that is Talker Thought in Spotify, Apple Podcast, as well as I think it is also distributed in many podcasting platforms like Google Podcast even. So you can just watch it, no, listen to it there. And let's just get into the first chapter. After dinner, I come straight back to the room. I pull the crystal cluster rock from my pocket and lay it on the bed in the front of me, along with a letter from yesterday. It doesn't make sense that they'd both be from the same person. I consider the possibility that whoever left the crystal might not have known of its protective qualities. Not that it, not that doesn't make sense either. Crystal cluster rocks are hard to come by. Someone would definitely have to go looking for one. There's a tiny flicker of hope at the end or at the back of my mind that the crystal might actually be from Chad. Maybe his way of making up for yesterday? I played the scenario out in my mind. Chad stopping by the New Age store on Greenvale Street, asking the person behind the counter for something special, something protective. Only it's not Chad's style to just go leaving something like that at the door. He would definitely have given it to me himself, unless, of course, he thought I was still mad at him. I pick up the phone to check my messages to see if he called. Since he wasn't in the cafeteria, I'm thinking he and his teammates just practiced right through their dinner break. I dialed the number to retrieve my messages. I have one. Hi, Stacy. The recording of my mother's voice plays. It's me. I just wanted to see how you're doing. Did Drea tell you I called last night? I really like to talk to you. Call me when you get in. Bye. I click the phone off and slouch down in bed. After a couple of minutes thinking and sulking, I take a deep breath and play my mother's message again. Her voice sounds sort of insistent, Like maybe she really has something to talk about. I click the phone back on and dial the number. Something definitely must be up. Usually, when mother calls and Drea answers, she's just as happy to talk to Drea since they're so much alike. Since they are both in love with stuff like Vogue magazine and Joanne and David shoes, while I'm whipping up protection spells and casting the ashes out to the wind. Though I have to admit, after everything that happened last year, it has been better between my mother and me. We talk more, we don't argue as much, and unlike other years going off to school this year, when we said our goodbyes, it felt different, harder. After a few rings, she picks up. Hi, Mom, I say. Stacy, I'm so glad you called. What's up? I ask. Is something wrong? No, she says. Nothing, I just wanted to talk to you. Oh. I pick Amber's feather pillow off the floor and begin plucking at the quills. Nothing much is new, I lie. I have a big English paper due next week and I haven't even finished the book yet. But everything's fine? She asks. I mean, you're okay? Yeah, I say, a huge question mark looming over my head. That's good, she says. I just wanted to check. Why? Did Drea say something when you called last night? No, she says. Should she have? No, everything's fine, I repeat, though I know I'm not fooling anyone. I can hear it in my voice, the wavering in my tone, the guilty squeak of my words. My mother doesn't respond, and I'm thinking it's because she knows what a horrible liar I am. Instead, she just sits in awkward phone silence in my bed of lies until I can't stand it anymore. I'm having nightmares again, I say. What do you mean, again? Is she kidding? When I was having nightmares about Mara 4 years ago, I told her about them. I told her that I didn't want to go to sleep anymore. That I was having nightmares every night about the same thing, about the same person. I just never told her who that person was. My mother didn't ask questions. She only responded with mugs of chamomile tea before bed and told me to try and think about more peaceful things before I went off to sleep, like rainbows and starfish. Then last year with Drea, there were more nightmares. And though I wasn't the one to tell my mother about them, when the trial came out, it was pretty much broadcast news. When I was asked at the trial how I knew that Donovan had brought Drea to the forest, I had no other answer but to tell everyone I dreamt it. And so the phone calls began. People, strangers calling me up asking me if I was having nightmares about them. We ended up having to change our number twice. My mother knows this, which is why I can understand how she can ask me what I'm talking about when I say I'm having nightmares again. Stacy, are you still there? Yeah? Well, what do you mean you're having nightmares again? I really don't feel like going into all of this, playing this stupid game with her, but I have no idea why she's playing it at all. Is she trying to make me into the happy cheerleader daughter that I'm not and never will be? Is she stuck in some sort of twisted denial about who I am? Actually, ma'am, Drea just came in and she needs to use the phone. Can I talk to you tomorrow? Sure, honey, she says. Give me a call, or I call you. Okay, okay, she repeats. Bye. I hung up, feeling even worse than before. Two lies in one night and nothing but an impending dose of karma to thank me for it. And so that was episode, no, chapter 16, where we are just seeing how much she has like this, not very uncommon, not uncommon though. I'm pretty sure there are a lot of mother and daughter relationship that is quite like this, but theirs is not, definitely not as smooth as a typical, I mean, not as sweet as the other mother and daughter relationship. She's having a really hard time bringing something up to her mom, Stacy, in particular. She is quite not there, and I mean, like, I think she feels that she has no one who actually know her that much except her grandmother, who is also quite into the spells and so on. And apparently, her mother is not really into this, and she feels like this shouldn't be the life that Stacy should have. But to be honest, it's not her choice. It's not her choice to dream about these dead people and all. So somehow, the friendship that she has with Drea and the relationship that Drea and her mom has is quite better on the outside, I think, for her mom. But we'll see in the next few episodes whether or not this is actually the case. But to be honest, it's just not looking good in terms of like if you're having this very difficult situation where you don't really understand what is happening, because this is all we're talking about, just dreams and like hallucinations maybe, and you can even talk about it to anyone who would actually understand and would give you advice, then that is very difficult. Then we'll just move on to the next episode or chapter. Why do I keep on saying episode? Um, all right. So this is chapter 17. After the phone call with my mother, I end up studying in my room for about 2 hours, trying to convince myself that the structure of a neuron, axon, dendrites, and all is the most riveting material that I could possibly be focusing on at the moment. But I'm also waiting for Chad to call. Since it's after 9, I still haven't spoken to him today. I'm wondering if maybe he's holding a grudge. But even if he is, it's still no excuse. He knows I've been under tremendous amount of stress lately. Even if he does believe it's post traumatic, so why can't he just put grudges aside and call me like any other good friend would? After two phone calls to his room with no lock, I end up giving him until exactly 9:15 before I decided to go out. At 9:19, I stuff the crystal cluster rack into my pocket, fill my backpack with a handful of spell ingredients, and make my way out into the night. I think I really need right now is a little bit of energy cleansing and some definite answers. And I can think of a better place to find both than outside under the frost moon. Especially since the thought of going down to my altar in the boiler room is so far from appealing right now. Since the entire campus is surrounded by acres of forest, it isn't difficult to find the ideal space. Despite what happened last year, I still found or love the forest, especially at night, under the moon and sputtering of stars. The whole atmosphere helps me reconnect with the natural spirit and put things into perspective. Using my small flashlight as a guide, I end up walking around the side of our dorm, across the lawn, and entering the forest by the path that everyone uses when they want to go drinking. I turn to the left and find myself a peaceful spot on the edge, just deep enough to be concealed but not too deep when I can't see the waxing gibbous moon right above me. It's absolutely perfect, just a day from fullness. So amazing that I can't believe I spent so long cooped up in my room. I sit on a patch of grass and do my best to breathe the moon's energy in, to swallow it up and allow the light to soak into my skin. After a few minutes, peaceful minutes, I take the crystal from my pocket and place it on the ground in front of me. It can't be a mere coincidence that someone dropped it right outside my study room door. I know that someone left it for me. I just need to figure out who that someone is before it's too late. I prop my flashlight up against a rock and begin emptying the spell ingredients from my bag. With a pair of scissors, I start with my hair. I grab one of the longer layers at the side, trim off about 4 full inches, and then knot the shorn tress at the top to avoid unnecessary frayage. The lock of hair looks weird in my hand, absolute surreal, like it isn't really mine. I deposit it into the metal mixing bowl I sometimes use for away from home spells and then pour a few droplets of clove oil on top. The normally pale orange liquid now a deep walnut color in such darkness. I move on to my fingernails next. Using a pair of regular nail clippers, I cut them down to the knobs over the bowl, making sure the individual shards drop inside. Then I pour in a few more droplets of the oil, the heavy scent filling the air around me. I touch the side of my hair where I cut. Despite my careful attempt, I can feel where the chunk is missing, just below my ear. Hopefully, the remaining strand is long enough to tie back. If not, I'll just have to do my best at blending. I glance down at my nails, all stubby now. A couple have even started to bleed. I stuff them into my mouth to clot the blood and then plunge them into the mixing bowl. Using my fingers, I mix my hair and bone up in the clove oil, concentrating on the mixture's ability to increase my psychic awareness of self. Skin and blood, oil and bone, I whisper. Oh, moon, I beg thee, let the truth be known. I pluck a potato, courtesy of the cafeteria lady on a duty this morning, and a black ballpoint pen from the side pocket of my bag. Into the raw potato skin, I carve my questions. Will I keep my promise? And what might my promise be? I plate the potato into the mixing bowl. I place it and pour the remainder of the clove oil over it, approximately 2 tablespoons. I roll the potato in the mixture, making sure it gets moistened, and carve the letters fill up with my spirits. After several moments of mixing and concentrating, I spread a large sheet of wax paper out of the on the ground and then pour the mixture onto it. The carved questions facing up toward the moon. I sprinkle some dirt on top in the form of the letter M and then roll everything up in the wax paper, securing it with thick rubber band. I offer you, moon, pieces of myself, my body, my my bone, wrapped in love and spirit, and ask thee in return to help me see more clearly, to increase my natural awareness. Using a spoon, I dig a hole upon about 6 inches deep into the patch of soil in front of me. My fingers aching as I struggle to break through the near frozen earth. I deposit the gift inside, pack the soil back up, and then place the crystal cluster rock over the spot. Blessed be. I whisper, looking up toward the moon. The spell complete. I feel completely refreshed, as though suddenly more awake, more tuned with myself and nature. I lean back on my elbows and noticed the pine tree just to the side of me. I love pine needles, the way they smell, the smooth and brittle texture when I roll them between my fingers, their ability to protect, to dispel negativity. I pick up a couple branches from the ground for later use. That's when I hear a rustling sound coming from a few yards behind me. I toss the branches into my bag along with my spell supplies and grab the crystal. It's probably just some kids looking to booze it up before bedtime. I wait a few seconds for more noise, but I don't hear anything. I switch off my flashlight and stand up. Now I can hear it, the snapping sound of kindling, like someone's made a campfire. I click my flashlight back on, but keep the beam low and take a few couple steps toward the sound. I can see the bright orangey glow in the distance, the tiny sparks that jump up into the wind, but I don't hear anything else. No voices or laughing, no sounds of beer cans opening or bottles being broken. The crystal pressed into my palm. I approach the campfire. Just a few yards away, I can see a male figure sitting in a partial clearing laden by the rocks, the left side of his body illuminated by the campfire flame. He reaches into his knapsack and begins gathering whatever lies inside into the crook of his arm. He gets up and spreads the objects out around the perimeter of the rocks or the fire. Rocks, I think. I do my best to try and keep track of how many he's settling down to see if he's marking all 8 directions north to west. But I can't be sure. He sits back down, pokes at the fire a couple times with a stick, and then pulls something from the side pocket of his knapsack, a jar. He shakes the contents up a few times and then holds the jar up to view. There's a powdery brownish substance inside, like beach sand, highlighted by the lapping flames. He unscrews the top and then pours something into it like a tiny container. From a tiny container. A liquidy substance. He mixes it all up with a stick from the ground, dips his finger inside, and then rubs the mixture down the side of his face and at the back of his neck. The whole picture of someone else aside from myself performing some sort of moonlight ritual, completely weirds me out. It's not because I think I'm the only person on the planet who knows or who does stuff like this. It's just that aside from my grandmother and some make believe witches on TV, I've never actually seen anybody else do stuff like this. And yet, aside from that weirded out part, there's another part that intrigued, curious, almost hopeful. And I'm not even sure why. I squeeze the crystal, noticing how warm it feels in my hand, how I can stop shaking. As curious as I am, and as much as I'd like to watch him more, I suddenly feel guilty as though I'm invading his sacred space, as though the moon is watching me do it. I step backward and point the flashlight beam toward the ground to navigate my way out. There's a group of bushes in front of me. I suck my gut in, hold the slack of my coat, and slip through as cleanly as possible to avoid making any noise. But on the second step, though, I hear a loud cracking noise. I stop, look down. It came from the ground. A long, dry branch cracked in half. My faux Doc Martin pressed down on the broken pieces. My heart starts beating so hard, I think he must hear that too. I click the flashlight off and do my best to hold my breath. And that ends chapter 17. Yeah, it's still quite weird to me that this book is like spells, and I am not really familiar. This is my first time I've read about maybe a story about witches and all, because I've been reading some books. I mean, I've read books for like demigods and goddesses, but they are in another world. But in this case, wise for magic is quite of like witchery stuff or stuff that, I mean, they are also saying spells and all, and as you can see, there is like a ritual that was even demonstrated here. She cuts a piece of her hair, like a droplet of her blood, and which is kind of creepy in my opinion. And to be honest, if I am not a believer of witchcraft, and my friend is, really, she is like one of the, I think her grandmother had given her the rights, maybe if that's how you call it, like doing the spells. I mean, she has taught her all of this, and she's, as much as she doesn't want to have this witchcraft, it's just really embedded into her life. Like, this is almost always happening every year, and it has been really, now this is one of the struggles that she has in both her friendship and relationship with her boyfriend. So she has been waiting for him to call, but yeah, her mom cannot give her like the emotional support that she needs. Her boyfriend is also not in any, I mean, he is not as supportive, or even he did not even try to comfort her in times like this. And it always feels like they are making her feel that what you're what you are dreaming of is not true, when obviously it happened way back before, and it happened, it has realized in front of them. Drea is one of the victims, and she was able to, save her because of these dreams. And now the people close to her, even the ones that she is expecting to be of support, is not even there. And that is really difficult. And that is why I'm thinking that from the trailer at the back of the book, there is another person here, or another character named Jacob. I think the one that she saw in the woods in this chapter was Jacob, who is also performing some spells, maybe. We don't know. Actually, we don't know the personality or even the role of Jacob in the story. Although in the trailer, it is supposed to mean, I mean, he is supposed to play the role of like Stacy to Drea before, where Jacob saw Stacy is going to die. Um, so he went to find her in another school, and then we don't know. We don't know how this is going to unfold. Maybe he's doing magic. I am just having trust issues. But he maybe doing some spells, or maybe he is doing that to, you know, to lead Stacy towards him because he wanted to get to know her, or he wanted to talk to her and tell her about his dreams, or if it's actually that, we don't know yet. I am just I don't know. I'm having like doubts that Jacob is a good person, but I can be wrong. This is why I really keep on reading this novel because I wanted to know what Jacob it really is. Because in this though, although this can be really a trick question, but can she trust Jacob, or will both their darkest dreams come true? We don't know. And for him to get out of his way to know Stacy, they don't know each other. Maybe they do know each other back in their childhood. We are just going to go back into this episode that I made if all of these um guesses is one of them is even true, or yeah, if my guesses are correct. But that is what I'm thinking. It's either he is one of the bad person, he's just he just wants Stacy to find him interesting, and then maybe he's the one who wanted to kill her. We don't know. Or he wanted to save her and he actually knew her before, maybe in their childhood. And also, one of the questions that we have is that why her mother is acting quite different in this year. I mean, the year of this book that we're talking about, because she apparently can remember most of her stories about the nightmares, and even though it was not just quiet, but it's really a big part of her life since last year. So that is really quite annoying, in my opinion, if your mother doesn't know about it and you don't really have anyone else to talk about this. Yeah, I just read some messages, but anyway, we can just continue on with maybe chapter 18. There's a lot of like discourses in chapter 18, so this is just quite a quick read, but I am just going to end this episode with this last chapter. Hopefully we get more information about that, or even at least answer move us towards the action in this novel. I close my eyes and squat as far down into the bushes as my knees will allow. Who's there? He calls, taking a step, and breathing so hard I can barely think straight. I scrunch myself up even further, burying my head into my knees, waiting for him to turn around like he's made some mistake. I can hear him moving toward me, his body shifting through the brush, his footsteps snapping fallen twigs just a few feet away now. I still I still don't move. I envision myself as part of these bushes, blending into them, imagining my arms like thick branches, my back like a stump. He takes another step and then another. I peek out through my fingers, but I can't see much from this angle. Just there's just brush scratching around or against my face. I know you're there, he says. Just inches from me now, I can hear the closeness of his voice. I take a deep breath, muster up the courage of the moon, and straighten up. He's standing right in front of me. I click my flashlight on and shine it toward him. He does the same. Stacy? He says. What are you doing here? He stares at me hard, his eyes wide, almost glinting. The color is visible in my flashlight beam, caught somewhere between gray and the lightest blue. How do you know me? I ask, the flashlight shaking in my grip. There's a mark in his face. From the spell, I presume, a thick and shimmering line down his cheek. We've met, he says. My voice cracks. Where? Don't you remember? I tighten my grip on the flashlight to steady the shake and clench down on my jaw. Conjuring up the other night in the boiler room, the guy chasing after me up the stairs and calling out my name. I wouldn't exactly call it meeting, I say through gritted teeth. What do you mean? Breaking into the boiler room of a girl's dorm in the middle of the night and scaring me half to death is hardly meeting. We met before that. Don't you remember? I study his face a moment. Tony skin, I think, and darkish hair, sort of longish on the top. I try to recollect the voice from my nightmare and the one behind the weathered gray door in the basement to decipher whether it's the same. But I can't I just can't tell. We bumped into each other, he says, in September during orientation. I don't think so, I say stepping back. Oh really? He says, moving forward. I was coming out of the bursar's office. You were hiking up the stairs two at a time. It takes me a couple moments, but then I do begin to remember bumping into someone, some faceless person. The avalanche of textbooks out of my backpack and down the stairs, the spill of pencils and other assorted school supplies. I remember being in such a rush, just scrambling there on the ground, trying to pick everything up and cram it back into my bag. Vaguely, I recall somebody trying his best to help me. Are you the one who sent me that email? I asked, changing the subject. We need to talk, Stacy, he says. Are you the one who gave me this? I hold the crystal out to show. Is that okay? Okay? Yeah, he says. I wanted you to have it. I was gonna give it to you myself, instead of just leaving it there at the door. But then I saw your friends coming and didn't feel like a party. It was that way at the hangman too. I wanted to talk to you alone. So we're alone now. I say, and as soon as I say it, I want to take it all back. I don't want him to know that I'm alone. I tighten my hand around the crystal, making a hardened fist, just in case I need to fight. I don't want to hurt you, Stacy. He says as though reading my mind. So, what do you want? Just like I said, we need to talk. So talk. Not now, not here. Then I'm out of here. I turn to leave. No, don't. He takes another step toward me, his eyes widening. I shine my flashlight toward the campus grass just a few yards away, the tall spotlights beaming over the cement benches in the near distance. If I wanted to, I could yell for help and someone would definitely hear me. Don't leave, he says. I do want to talk to you. I'm just in the middle of something right now. I look over his shoulder at the fire still alive and kindling, a few stray embers floating up from the heat. What are you doing? I think you might already have some idea. He looks deeply at me, his slate blue eyes pouring right into my own. So intense I have to look away. Can we talk tomorrow? He says, or he asks. I don't say anything because I want to talk to him, because I want to find out what he has to say. I just don't want him to know I do. We could try meeting at the Hangman again, he says. After hours, but this time you could come alone? Why so late? I ask. Because what I have to say is private. No one else can be around. What is it about? You, he says. What about me? The crystal I gave you, he begins. You know what it means, right? But instead of answering, I focus on the glistening stripe down his cheek. A mix of sandalwood and dandelion, maybe. I'll meet you in the library, I say. In the same study room, 8 o'clock, we can keep the door closed. You promise you'll be there? I promise, he said. I mean. The words so heavy in my mind, as in, will I keep my promise? Yeah, he says, looking at me funny. You promise you'll be there. I nod, trying to figure him out, trying to decide if he's the one who sent the letter. But I won't wait for you. At 8:05, I'm gone. A tiny smile forms on his lips, like he's relieved and pleased at the same time. He pauses a moment to study my face, my chin, my lips, and then locks eyes with me once more. We stand there a moment in awkward silence, me not knowing whether or not we're done, if I should leave him waiting my next move. I steal myself from his stare and turn away, back out through the forest, back on relatively safe campus soil. But I can still feel him, his eyes watching me. I follow the moon back around to the front of the dorm, where I'm alone, where it's safe to let out my breath, and untwist the binds on my heart. I lean back against the front door, my heart beating freely now, throbbing inside my chest. My whole body's shaking, the blood stirring inside my veins, over my bones, and beneath the skin. My mind races with questions. What's wrong with me? Who is this guy? Why didn't I even ask his name? I cover my eyes with my hands in an effort to stop the collision of questions. But that only makes me dizzier. Because all I can picture there, in the dark and dankness of my palms, are his penetrating slate blue eyes. And that is the end of. Oops, I closed it without the bookmark. That is the end of chapter 18. And to be honest, it is quite intriguing as well. I mean, this could also be like a some kind of romance novel, maybe. I'm not sure because it feels like they are going to be. She's quite interested in him as the same as he is interested in her. We just don't know why. Most and foremost, Jacob, we already know his name. Obviously, that is going to be Jacob. If not, then I'm going to be very confused. In any case, Jacob knew her, knew her name even before they actually met. Because when they met, and as we have been um described, I mean, not we have been described. What am I talking about? But as Stacy described their meeting was, or quote unquote meeting, was she is holding like stack of books in front of her and they apparently have bumped into each other. So she is more focused on picking up all of these pencils and all that is scattered on the ground instead of looking at the person who bumped into her. So that was only the meeting that they had, and it was during the orientation. So maybe it was a time where they are introduced with their names. I am just not sure, but if he is able to remember his name as well as her face, during the orientation where and they only bump into each other like once. He seemed to be quite unrecognizable on her end. So it's we don't know why. Maybe also because this school is known to have like this mysterious as we have known in the previous chapters. There were a few students who transferred from another school to their school simply because they want to like to be one of the ghostbusters. So they're more interested about the stories in the campus, all of these mysteries, and some weird ghosts hunting activities that is happening during the nighttime. So we don't know if Jacob is one of them, and that's why Stacy is also quite popular, or not popular in a in in such a way that people want to become popular. She is popular because of some odd reasons, because she can see um she can see the deaths of people, and that is what's known in the campus as well as maybe even in newspapers, because this is a news of the town, and that is quite interesting. um so one of the guesses is not anymore is already incorrect, because I thought that he might be a childhood friend, and also he is not luring him or luring her towards him, because she was just there at the same time with him, like performing some spells, and you know at this point he is I mean Stacy is also quite attracted to to his stares. I mean, when you are describing someone's color of the eyes, especially in the novels, it would usually mean that you are quite attracted to that feature of that person. So, or maybe it's the asset of that person, and that's why it was like you describe it as is because you find it really beautiful. And I think that Stacy is quite attracted to him as well, although there is no other descriptive characteristics of him. His stares is like studying his her facial features as well, so there is some sort of like trying to get familiarize. Why can't I speak today? Familiarize. Sorry, but yeah, they are trying to familiarize their features to yeah, with one another, and maybe when they meet at the library where the lighting is quite better, there might be some more descriptions, and we will get to know more if this is really an attraction, or this is just really something like an objective knowing, like because he is on a mission to save her maybe, and she is also quite really curious to know someone else who is doing the same thing as her. And as there is like we build up this two people, even her friends, both Drea and um I forgot her other friend's name because I've been reading this for quite a while, but her two close friends are just, I mean, Drea is interested about this. She is still very affected by the last year's events, so she doesn't want to be involved. She really hates to hear about the nightmares again. um the other one, who's the other one? Why can't I remember? Drea and Amber. Yeah, Amber. So Amber looks at this as another adventure, which is for people who is directly involved like Stacy. This is not an adventure. This is another nightmare coming into life. She has her mom who doesn't remember or doesn't even give her like the support, and even some clarity what is really happening to her, because basically her mother brought her to life, and this she doesn't really ask for this to be her ability. Her grandmother knows, but it's not enough for her to be complacent of whatever she knows about the spells and all, especially if it feels more like a curse for her. That is at least how she's describing this. And then she may have like a boyfriend who supposedly would help her through um the difficult times in her life, and obviously this is going to be one of the most difficult time of her life, now that she is dreaming about people who is apparently who are already dead, and she doesn't know the answers of all of the clues that she is dreaming about. And there is like you know um a threat in her life. It feels like she is going to be alone, and then but knowing someone who is actively protecting her, and who knows the same spells, or I mean he's also a believer of witchcraft, then that is going to be like a win-win situation for her. And it might also be no a trap, no, not exactly a trap, but it is going to be easy for her to fall for a person like this, who is like the person who she needed the most in this situation. So yeah, I think I will just be ending my podcast, my live podcast, a video podcast there, and hopefully I would be able to like sum this up, these three chapters, in one episode in my podcast, in the Talk Your Thought podcast that is available in Spotify, Apple Podcast, and some other podcasting platforms. And I hope to hear you all again next time.